What is going on, guys, and welcome back to Touchdowns to Home Runs. My name is Bernie. Thank you for joining us today on the Touchdowns to Home Runs show. Hope that your day is going absolutely fantastic. Just moments ago, the U.S. Open live draw was officially released, and I'm super excited to get going with the fourth and final Grand Slam of the year. So today we'll be taking a look at the draw, breaking down the draw, particularly the matchups to watch for some of the top seeds, and then make sure to stick around to the end of the video and really throughout the video for some potential sleepers to watch in the bracket as well. Just before we do get in the video, though, as always, if you do enjoy what you see today, please make sure to do me a huge favor. Smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to Touchdowns to Home Runs for more content just like this. I want to get it started off with some notable news, particularly the number of big withdrawals who are not going to be playing in this year's U.S. Open. Obviously, the big two, Nadal and Federer, not playing. Between the two of them have 9 U.S. Open titles, but both are out with injuries. Nadal still dealing with that foot injury, and Roger Federer with that knee injury. The defending U.S. Open champion from 2020, Dominic Thiem, is also going to be out of the tournament this year with a wrist injury, and Stan Wawrinka, who won the U.S. Open in 2016, also out of the draw. But anyways, let's get into the top 10 seeds. Of course, the number 1 seed coming into the tournament is Novak Djokovic. Some of the earlier players that he's got to look out for, Kei Nishikori and Goffin as well. And then after that, Karatsev and Alex de Minaur players to look out for. But Novak Djokovic is going to be coming into the U.S. Open, obviously, as the favorite, but it is worth noting he hasn't played a match yet since his bronze medal loss at the Olympics in Tokyo. With that being said, though, Novak still has a shot to win the calendar slam. He's won the first 3 Grand Slams of the year, and overall is putting together a fantastic year with a record of 38-5. In the past 52 weeks, Novak's return rating ranks number 3 on tour. Of course, one of, if not the greatest returners in our sport, and he ranks number 1 on the tour in terms of percentage of points won on the opposition's first serve. Number 2 is Medvedev, and players to watch in his part of the bracket, Cilic, who's obviously always a threat with that big serve on the hard courts, put together a couple of good weeks lately. And then Dimitrov, also a player who isn't quite what he used to be a few years back, but he is seemingly getting back into a better form now, so that could potentially be a tricky matchup. But for Medvedev, he did have a tricky sort of part of the season in the clay and grass court seasons, but bounced back well in this hard court resumption in the later part of this 2021 season. Won the Masters 1000 event in Toronto and made the semifinals of the 1000 in Cincinnati before losing to Rublev. Medvedev, of course, his best surface is, of course, the hard courts. Uses his ability to move around the courts, court coverage, top return game. He's also got an increasingly improving first serve, which has been really effective in serving him out of some tricky situations. All that work really well on this surface. He ranks 4th on tour in terms of return rating, but honestly, in order for Medvedev to make a deep run, potentially win this tournament, the biggest thing to look out for him and his game is how good he's going to be behind the second serve. Needs to be better than he has been in past weeks, but of course, I think Medvedev definitely has a shot to potentially win the tournament, win his first Grand Slam. It would be a real interesting match as an Australian Open rematch if he does end up playing Novak Djokovic at some point in this tournament in the championship match, but we will have to wait and see. Number 3 is Tsitsipas, another interesting player, and he's got a really interesting draw. Opening match is actually against Andy Murray, and that'll be a tricky one. Went out first round exit in Wimbledon, and Andy Murray, of course, not what he used to be, but definitely a tricky matchup there, and then potentially later on in the draw, Cam Norrie. Tsitsipas did have a bit of a rough stretch post-French Open. He posted a 4-4 record after he made the semifinals in Roland Garros in his first 8 matches after that, but has seemed to sort of bounce back. He does seem to be in a better form now. He had back-to-back semifinal appearances in Toronto and Cincinnati, both 1,000 events. Even with the grass struggles, on the grass surface, he does remain the ATP year-to-date wins leader, so putting together a really solid year, and overall his game has just taken massive steps in improving in terms of his shot making on serve. All have been very impressive. The big thing for Tsitsipas is going to be his consistency, and although, again, it does look like he is regaining his form, his level has dropped in some parts of quite a few matches that he has played recently, including a 3rd set collapse against Zverev, which would have been a very big win, which he was up a double break in that 3rd set. consistency with the shot making, going to be huge for Tsitsipas if he wants to make a deep run and potentially win this tournament. Number 4 is Alex Zverev, potentially the most exciting player to watch on tour right now. First seeded player that he's going to play is Bublik, which is actually a pretty favorable matchup in my opinion for Zverev. And then Pablo Carreno Busta after that, another potentially favorable matchup for him. But yeah, what a season it's been for Zverev in the middle, especially right now, just a fantastic run. And let's go over sort of what his years look like. Earlier on this year in May, won a 1,000 event in Madrid. Semi-final appearance in the French Open, won an Olympic gold medal in Tokyo, and then of course last week coming off that 1,000 title victory in Cincinnati, which actually now puts him on a 12-match win streak. Zverev, especially on serve, has been really impressive as of late, particularly again on that serve. He's been able to limit double faults, being really solid behind that first serve. And from what I've seen over the course of the past month, Zverev has found a form that looks essentially unbeatable to most players on the ATP Tour. And if he finds the consistency on the ground game, a potential matchup, especially because he already beat Novak Djokovic in the Olympics, would be a real interesting, intriguing matchup later on in this tournament. Number 5 is Rublev, has TFO in round 3, Auger-Aliassime potentially after. It's a bit of a tricky matchup for Rublev, especially having TFO that early. But yeah, Rublev again, missed of a very solid 2021, ranks 3rd on tour in wins year to date, only behind Djokovic and Tsitsipas. Coming off a fantastic week as well, made the finals in Cincinnati before losing to Zverev, but overall on hard courts has a lot of potential. Really good attacking style, really solid from the baseline as well. Tournaments like these are going to be huge for Rublev. Obviously, we know that he's done and performed really well in 500 tournaments, but continuing to find consistency at 1,000 events, and particularly in majors, is going to be huge for Rublev as he tries to take sort of the next step in his career. Matteo Berrettini, number 6, has Ivashka early, which could be an interesting match. He's a guy who's sort of definitely a dark horse to potentially make some upsets in this tournament, been playing some pretty solid tennis as of late, but Hurcakz later on in this tournament is the matchup that I'm really trying to key in on here for Berrettini. For Berrettini, the US Open will be his 2nd tournament after finishing as the Wimbledon runner-up earlier on this year, put together a solid 2021. He's ranked 8th right now in the ATP race with 2 titles to his name this year and several runners-up, again, including the Wimbledon tournament. Berrettini's game, of course, definitely can translate to the hard courts. Everything builds off that big serve that he has. His serve ranks 6th on the ATP Tour overall and 3rd in percentage of points won behind his first serve. Other than his withdrawal in the Aussie Open, both of his exits in the French Open and Wimbledon did come at the hands of Novak Djokovic, so it'll be interesting to see if Berrettini can potentially get some momentum earlier on this tournament and get another crack at the world number 1. Number 7 is Denis Shapovalov. Potential matchups to look out for against Khachanov and Carreno Busta. Shapovalov is another interesting player to watch in this tournament for sure, because in his last major in Wimbledon, made his first career semifinals at a Grand Slam and played some absolutely phenomenal tennis in that entire grass court season. But post-Wimbledon has taken a first-round exit in all 3 of the tournaments that he's played in. But he's definitely a guy that can continue to break through and has shown some really good signs of potentially breaking through very, very soon. But the main factor for him is consistency, consistency, consistency. Can Shapovalov string together multiple weeks in a row and deep runs into these bigger tournaments? But given his confidence and increasingly better play with momentum, he's definitely a guy that could gain some momentum in the first week of a tournament and be a major threat to top seeds later come week 2. Casper Ruud, number 8, has Isner and Diego Schwartzman on his side. A Casper Ruud-Isner matchup would be very exciting, especially considering that Casper Ruud about a week ago took out Reilly Opelka, who's obviously got that big serve as well. But comes into the US Open, Casper Ruud does in really a prime situation to sort of have a breakout run. He failed to make deep runs in either Toronto or Cincinnati over the past 2 weeks. But he's definitely sort of hitting a stride right now. Had wins over Cilic, Schwartzman, and Opalka, asserting himself into the top of the tour. Prior to Toronto, he was also on a 12-match win streak, which included 3 ATP 250 titles in a row. But again, it's going to be consistency in those big tournaments. He's never made it out of the fourth round of a Grand Slam, so we'll see if this could potentially be his first time. Number 9, Pablo, Carreno, Busta, Opalka, and Shapo, players to watch in his part of the draw. Very, very, very interesting draw. I think in the early part of the tournament, this is definitely, fourth round and prior, this is probably the most interesting section of the bracket. Carreno Busta, though, gaining boatloads of confidence recently with some exceptional play. Won the German Open, had a bronze medal in Tokyo, which did include a win over Novak Djokovic in that bronze medal game. All around, he's a very good all-around player who thrives in the return game and is made for Grand Slam play. He's got very good endurance and definitely able to thrive in longer matches. Number 10, rounding out the top 10 seeded players, is Hurcakz. Early on in the draw, Kudla, Sonego, some interesting matchups potentially there. But what a season Hurcakz has had so far, and really become one of my favorite players, if I'm being honest. Some unfortunate losses for him recently. The last 3 losses were Berrettini in the semifinals of Wimbledon, a 3-set loss in a match against Medvedev, which honestly he outplayed Medvedev for the majority of, and then a 7-6, 7-6 loss to Pablo, Carreno, Busta. So 3 really good players that he played really, really tight. And just unable to get the job done. So we'll see if he's able to sort of beat those top guys come this U.S. Open. But obviously, he's a great server. Game is definitely transferable to the hard courts, and he's one of the best net players you'll see. He played a bunch of doubles, which is, how he really got to improve that area of his game. And even though he is a high seed, I would still consider Hurcakz a dark horse. So definitely look at him as an underdog to potentially make a deep run in this major. Aside from the top 10, I want to talk about the 2 guys that everybody's talking about, which are the serve bots. And especially because both Isner and Reilly Opelka are going to be home in the U.S. Open. Both of them are American players. Let's start with John Isner, though. His side of the draw, Nakashima and Diego Schwartzman. Actually, a very, very favorable draw for John Isner. Nakashima, he beat a couple of weeks ago in the finals of, I think it was Atlanta. And Schwartzman is obviously a great player, but he struggled against some of the upper-end players in the ATP Tour, so you never know. Now, coming into the year, Isner did lack some match fitness, didn't really play a lot last year, but he's hit a stride right now. Again, won Atlanta about a month ago, had a semifinal appearance a couple of weeks ago in Toronto, and obviously it's no real surprise, though, but with his electric serve, you're always talking about him on the hard courts. But it's the quality of his ground game that has actually really surprised me in some of these matches. So definitely look out for John Isner. Reilly Opelka is the other one on his side of the draw, as I was mentioning before. Carreno, Busta, Denis Shapovalov. But Opelka has shot up the rankings this season thanks to his massive serve, which has helped him actually beat some of the top players like Tsitsipas in Toronto. In Toronto, he made his first finals appearance in a Masters 1000 event. An interesting stat, actually, he has played at least one tiebreaker in 12 of his last 14 matches played. Even for the top guys on the ATP Tour, the serve of Opelka is always going to be a struggle and a massive difficulty to face. The question is, though, in my opinion, is can Opelka do enough in the return game, and can he do enough from the baseline to be able to take the next step? We'll have to wait and see. But anyways, guys, that's going to be all for today. I am going to have some more U.S. Open coverage before we do start the actual tournament play on Monday. I think it starts, so definitely make sure if you enjoyed what you saw today to smash the thumbs up button, subscribe to Touchdowns to Home Runs, of course, in order to stay up to date with all of that new videos that are coming out. But anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's video, thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you guys again next time.